My name is Claire, and this isn't a story about love. Not the kind you read in books, anyway. It's a story about silence, and how it can grow so loud, it starts to drown you from the inside. When I first met Ethan, the world felt like it had color again. He wasn't the kind of man who talked too much, but when he did, it felt like the truth itself was speaking. There was something steady about him, something that made me feel safe. For a while, that was enough. We built our life around the small things. Morning coffee, shared glances, quiet laughter that lived only between us. But time, it changes people in ways you don't notice until one day you look at them and realize you're staring at a stranger. It started with the pauses, the way he'd drift into thought, his eyes fixed somewhere far away. I'd ask, "Are you okay?" He'd smile, that same calm, effortless smile, and say, "Yeah, just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. It was distance, invisible, growing, unstoppable. I told myself it was fine, that maybe marriage was supposed to fade a little, like photographs do with age. But the truth? I could feel him leaving me long before he ever walked away. Then came the night I'll never forget. It was raining, the kind of rain that feels heavy, like it's trying to tell you something. Ethan hadn't come home yet. It was past midnight, and all I could hear was the clock ticking, each second pulling me deeper into a pit I couldn't escape. When I finally heard his car pull up, I ran to the window. He stepped out, his shirt damp, his eyes hollow. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word. He just sat in the living room, staring at nothing, breathing like the world had already ended. I wanted to scream, to ask what happened, but something in me froze, because deep down, I already knew. There was another woman. Her name was Anna, and I don't blame her. Not really. Sometimes people find pieces of themselves in others that they've long lost in the ones they love. But what hurt wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence that came after, the silence that told me everything I was too afraid to hear. We tried to fix it, of course. People always do. We went on walks, talked about the weather, even laughed about old memories like ghosts pretending to be alive. But every word felt rehearsed, every smile borrowed, every touch heavy with the weight of what used to be. One evening, as the sun fell behind the city skyline, Ethan turned to me and said, "Claire, do you ever feel like we're just pretending?" And that was it. The last thread snapped. The truth spilled out, not in words, but in tears that neither of us tried to stop. I watched him pack his things the next morning. No arguments, no anger, just quiet understanding. When he closed the door behind him, I didn't chase him, because sometimes letting go is the only act of love left. Days turned into weeks. The house felt too big, too still. The mornings came without his voice, without the hum of his laughter over coffee. And yet, in that emptiness, something unexpected began to grow. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from finally facing the truth. Ethan had been gone long before he left, and I had been waiting for myself to come back. Sometimes I still dream about him, about the way we used to dance in the kitchen when no one was watching, about the way he'd whisper my name like a secret. But when I wake up, I smile, because not every ending is meant to be sad. Some are just meant to set you free. And maybe that's what love really is, not holding on, but knowing when to let go. The first few weeks after Ethan left were the hardest. It wasn't the loneliness that hurt most. It was the quiet. The house had its own heartbeat once, a rhythm built from shared laughter, clinking cups, footsteps echoing through rooms we filled with dreams. Now it was just silence, and the silence was louder than ever. I tried to fill it, with music, candles, the smell of coffee I didn't finish, but nothing stayed. Everything felt temporary, like I was living inside a photograph that had already begun to fade. One evening, I found his old sweater folded in the back of a drawer. It still smelled faintly of his cologne. cedarwood and rain. For a moment it felt like he was standing right behind me, his breath on my neck, his hand reaching for mine. But when I turned around, there was nothing, just air, just absence. That night I sat by the window, the same one I used to watch him through. And for the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered into the darkness, "I forgive you." Not because he asked for it, but because I needed to set myself free. Days bled into nights, seasons shifted, and the world outside kept moving like it always does. People smiled, cars passed by, the sky changed colors. But I was still here, suspended between who I was and who I was becoming. And then, something strange began to happen. It started with a letter. No name, no return address. Just my name written in handwriting that looked almost familiar. Inside there was a single sentence. "Not everything lost is meant to be found." At first I thought it was a cruel joke, but there was something about those words that made my heart race, something that whispered, "This isn't over." Over the next few days, more letters came, each one written in the same looping script, each one carrying a piece of something I couldn't quite place. They weren't threats or apologies, just fragments. A pressed flower, a photograph of the sea, a train ticket from a town I'd never heard of, and always, always, a sentence. Forgiveness is just another kind of remembering. Some doors must remain closed, even if you hold the key. Truth doesn't disappear, it just waits. The last one caught me off guard, because on the back of that note, faintly in pencil, was Ethan's signature. For a long time I stared at it, feeling the air thicken around me. Had he written these? Was this his way of reaching out from a distance he couldn't cross? Or was it something else entirely? I decided to find out. The train ticket, the one from the last letter, was to a small coastal town 3 hours away. I didn't think. I just packed a bag, took a deep breath, and left. The journey felt endless. The fields rolled by like old memories, blurred and half-remembered. When I arrived, the station was nearly empty, the kind of place time had forgotten. The sea stretched beyond the tracks, silver under a pale sun. And on the edge of the platform there was a bench, with another envelope sitting on it. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside, a photograph. It was me, standing by the same window in my house, taken from outside, at night, and below it, one sentence. "You were never alone." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The air felt cold, heavy. I looked around, but the platform was empty. No one, not even a shadow. I sat down, clutching the photo, the sea wind whipping through my hair. Was it Ethan? Was he watching me all this time? Or was someone else keeping me trapped in a memory I thought I'd escaped? I didn't know. But deep down I felt it. Whatever this was, it wasn't finished. And maybe, some stories don't end when love does. Maybe they begin there, in the silence that follows, in the echoes that refuse to die. I didn't sleep that night. The photograph kept replaying in my mind like a broken film reel. My face framed by the glow of the living room window, unaware that someone was out there, watching. I stared at the picture for hours. The more I looked at it, the more I noticed the details. The faint reflection of the streetlight, the edge of the curtain, the way my hand seemed frozen mid-motion. But what unsettled me most wasn't the image. It was the angle. Whoever took it had been close, too close. The next morning I packed a few things and checked into a small inn near the sea. It was an old wooden place with faded blue walls and rooms that smelled faintly of salt and secrets. The woman at the counter smiled kindly and handed me a brass key that jingled like a memory. "Room 7, she said. "It's quiet there." Quiet, that word again. I was beginning to hate it. I spent the first few hours sitting by the window, watching the tide pull away and return again, like it was trying to take something, but couldn't. Every time a figure passed on the road below, I felt my chest tighten. Was it him? Was it someone else? Or was I finally losing my mind? That night, another letter arrived. It was slipped under my door, sealed with black wax, my name written in that same looping hand. I opened it slowly. Inside was a map, old, yellowed, marked with a red cross near the edge of the cliffs, and below it, just 3 words. Come find me. I stared at it for what felt like forever. Part of me wanted to throw it away, to go back home and pretend none of this existed. But another part, the one that had been quietly breaking for months, wanted answers, even if the truth hurt, even if it destroyed whatever peace I'd managed to build. The cliffs were a 20-minute walk from the inn. By the time I reached them, the sun had slipped behind the clouds, and the world felt suspended between light and darkness. The sea roared below, restless and cold. And there, near the edge, I saw him. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But no, it was real. The way he stood, shoulders slightly slumped, hands in his coat pockets, the way the wind tangled his hair. It was Ethan. I froze. For a moment, all the anger, all the sadness, all the love I thought I'd buried. It came rushing back, crashing through me like waves against stone. Ethan, I called out. He turned slowly, and when his eyes met mine, I saw it. Not guilt, not regret, but fear. Claire, he said softly. You shouldn't be here. My heart raced. You sent the letters, didn't you? He shook his head. Not all of them. What do you mean? He looked past me, toward the shadows gathering behind the rocks. Someone else knows, Claire. Someone who shouldn't. I stepped closer. Knows what? He hesitated, his jaw tightening. The night I left, it wasn't just because of her. There were things I couldn't tell you, things I did to protect you. I stared at him, searching for truth in his trembling voice. He looked thinner, older, like the months apart had taken something from him too. What are you talking about? I asked. Before he could answer, a gust of wind tore through the cliffs. Something metallic glinted behind the rocks, a camera lens. My blood turned to ice. Someone was watching us. Even now, Ethan grabbed my arm. We have to go. We ran. The sound of the waves roaring behind us, footsteps echoing on wet stone. The wind howled like a warning. I didn't dare look back. When we reached the car, I turned to him. Ethan, tell me what's happening. He looked at me, really looked, and whispered. They were never watching me, Claire. They were watching you. The words hit me like lightning. I tried to make sense of them. But before I could ask, he reached into his coat pocket and handed me something. A small flash drive, wrapped in paper. Everything you need to know is on this, he said. But don't trust anyone, not even me. And then, just like that, he was gone. The door slammed. The car roared to life, and I stood there, the sea wind cutting through me, holding a secret I didn't ask for, and a truth I wasn't ready to face. When I got back to my room, my hands were still shaking. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It took a moment to load. A single folder appeared on the screen. Inside were photos, dozens of them, all of me, at home, at work, at the cafe I visited on Sundays. Even one of me sleeping, and then, the last one, a picture of Ethan, lying on the cliffs, eyes closed, no pulse. The timestamp on the photo? 2 hours ago. I dropped the laptop, my breath catching in my throat. The world went silent again. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was alive, and somewhere in that silence, a knock came from the door. Slow, measured, 3 times. I didn't move, because whoever was outside already knew my name. The following morning began with a silence that didn't feel ordinary. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of dawn. It was something else. Something heavy, as though the house itself was holding its breath. Claire woke up to find the curtains drawn shut. even though she was sure she'd left them open the night before. The sunlight bled through in thin golden lines, slicing across the floor like secrets trying to escape. Her phone was still on the nightstand. No missed calls, no messages. But when she unlocked it, there was a single notification that hadn't been there before. New shared folder, untitled. The sender's name was hidden behind a blank icon. No number, no email, just emptiness. She hesitated for a long time before opening it. Inside were 10 video clips, all time-stamped from the previous night. Each clip lasted only a few seconds. Short bursts of motion caught from somewhere inside her home. One showed her standing by the kitchen sink, staring out the window. Another, her shadow crossing the hallway. The last one, her sleeping. Her pulse quickened. She turned toward the corner of the room, half expecting to find a lens glinting from the shadows. Nothing. And then she noticed it. A faint buzzing sound near the ceiling vent. When she climbed onto a chair and looked closer, she saw it. A small black disc, no bigger than a coin. It wasn't just a vent. It was a camera. Claire's breath hitched. She stumbled backward, almost knocking over the chair. The air felt thinner, like she wasn't alone even though she clearly was. She rushed to the living room. Another faint buzz above the bookshelf. Then the study. Another one inside the light fixture. She stopped counting after 4. That's when she heard her phone vibrate again. A message. You were never supposed to find them yet. Her heart froze. She stared at the screen, rereading the words again and again. Who was this? And what did they mean by yet? She wanted to call Ethan, but something in her gut told her not to. Not yet. She had to know how deep this went. Claire grabbed her keys, her pulse a thunder in her ears, and left the house. She didn't drive. She walked, fast, almost running, until she reached the small cafe near the park where she'd met David for coffee months before. She sat at the corner table, the same one where sunlight used to spill across the wood. The waiter recognized her. Your usual? She nodded automatically, though she didn't remember what that even was anymore. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an email, no sender listed. The subject line, "You deserve the truth." Attached was a single file. She downloaded it, hands trembling. The screen flickered and then a video began to play. Her husband's office, the same conference room from that night long ago. But this time, the camera wasn't focused on David. It was focused on her. In the footage, she was standing by the table, the box of cookies beside her. David was speaking, but no sound came through, only silence. Then, a slow zoom on the photo he had shown her, a frame pause. And then, another face entered the shot. Her husband's. Not from that night, but from earlier footage, spliced together deliberately. The angles, the lighting, none of it matched. Someone had constructed this moment, twisted it, reframed it. She realized it then. This wasn't surveillance. It was manipulation. Someone wanted her to believe she was being watched. Someone wanted to rewrite her memory of that night. Her hands shook so violently she could barely hold the phone. Then the cafe door opened. A man stepped in. Tall, dark coat, calm eyes that scanned the room once, then fixed on her. He smiled faintly, almost reassuringly. "Claire," he said softly, approaching her table. "You shouldn't have opened that file." He sat down across from her like an old friend returning from a long journey. Calm, deliberate, as though he had been rehearsing this meeting for years. Claire's breath came shallow. The cafe hummed quietly with life. The clinking of spoons, a low song playing from a speaker, the whisper of conversations too far to make out. But here, between them, it felt as if the world had gone completely still. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely holding steady. He smiled, not a kind smile, not cruel either. Something in between, as if kindness and danger were wearing the same mask. "My name isn't important," he said, "but I've been watching over you for a while." Her chair creaked as she leaned back. "Watching me?" He nodded, calm as ever. "Not in the way you think. I don't spy on people, Claire. I observe them. You were part of something you didn't realize. The way he said her name, gently, almost respectfully, made her skin crawl. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "What was I part of?" The man glanced toward the window. Outside, cars passed. People walked by, unaware of the quiet storm building inside the cafe. Then he turned back to her. "You were chosen," he said. "Not by me. By them? By who?" He paused for a long moment before answering. "By the ones who built the world you think you understand." Her confusion turned to unease. "That doesn't make any sense." He smiled faintly, the corner of his mouth lifting like someone about to tell a secret. "It will," he said, "when you stop believing everything you remember." Claire stared at him. "What are you implying?" "Tell me," he said, leaning forward. "How sure are you that your memories belong to you?" For a moment she couldn't speak. She wanted to laugh, to call him crazy. But something deep inside her resisted, because she had been questioning her own memory lately. Little things. The wrong cup left on the counter. Doors unlocked she swore she'd locked. Dreams that felt more like stolen moments from another life. He saw the doubt flicker in her eyes and nodded slowly. "You felt it," he said. "The displacement. The faint hum in your walls. The déjà vu that never fades. That's them, Claire. Testing the edges." "The edges of what?" she whispered. "Of reality." Her pulse quickened. "You're saying someone's controlling what I see?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he slid a small black card across the table. No name, no logo. Just a single line of text engraved in silver. Project Halcyon. Room 104. She turned the card over. "Nothing. What is this?" "Where it started," he said. "And where you'll find what's been done to you." Before she could respond, he stood up. "But be careful, Claire. They don't like when people remember." "Wait," she called out, standing. But he was already gone, melting into the crowd outside like a ghost that had only borrowed a human shape for a while. Claire stood frozen, staring at the black card in her hand. Project Halcyon. It sounded like something from a dream or a nightmare. That night she couldn't sleep. The card lay on her nightstand like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. She searched the name online. Nothing. No results. No references. Not even a rumor. It was as if it didn't exist. But she couldn't let it go. By morning, she decided, she would go there. The building was tucked away behind the industrial district, old and gray, with no signs or markings. A single rusted door led inside. Her footsteps echoed as she entered. The air smelled of dust, metal, and something faintly electrical. She found the corridor numbered in fading paint. Room 104. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, monitors lined the walls, each one showing fragments of her life. Walking home, making coffee, sleeping, sitting by the window. Every detail of her existence captured from angles she never noticed. And then, one screen flickered. It wasn't her. It was the stranger from the cafe, sitting in the same chair she'd sat in yesterday, smiling into the camera. Behind him, her husband. The words that appeared next made her stomach drop. Phase 2. Subject has returned. The monitors went black. The room dimmed. A faint hum filled the air, and from somewhere behind her, a voice said softly, "Welcome back, Claire." That night, sleep felt like a stranger standing just outside my window, watching, waiting, but never coming in. I lay awake staring at the faint cracks on the ceiling, tracing them like paths that might lead me back to the truth. Ethan's words echoed in my mind, the way his voice trembled when he said, "You wouldn't understand." He was right. I didn't. But I wanted to. The next morning I noticed something new. The air in the house felt heavier. The coffee machine was already on. Ethan hadn't left early as usual. Instead, he sat at the table silent, staring at his phone. Couldn't sleep either, I asked. He looked up, forcing a smile. You worry too much. But his eyes, they told another story. One of exhaustion, guilt, or maybe fear. When he left for work, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I followed him, not to spy, but to understand, to piece together whatever puzzle he was hiding from me. His car took a different route than usual. Instead of the office downtown, he drove toward the old part of the city, where the streets narrowed and the buildings leaned like tired souls. I parked a few blocks away and walked quietly behind. He entered a small abandoned bookstore, the kind that smelled of dust and forgotten stories. Through the window, I saw him talking to a woman I'd never seen before. Her hair was silver, her face calm but sharp, like someone who'd seen too much and stopped flinching. They didn't hug. They didn't argue. But the way she looked at him, it was as if she knew everything about him. Things I didn't. When he left, I waited a few minutes before stepping inside. The bell above the door jingled softly. The woman looked up. You shouldn't have followed him, she said before I could even speak. My heart froze. Who are you? She smiled faintly, the one who tried to warn him. There was silence, the kind that bends the world around it. She slid a small envelope across the counter. Take this, but once you open it, you'll never see him the same way again. Her tone was calm, almost gentle, but every word felt like a stone dropping into my chest. I didn't open it, not yet. I walked out, clutching it in my hand like a heartbeat. The city around me blurred, colors fading into noise. At home, the envelope sat on the table between my hands for hours. Every time I tried to tear it open, something in me hesitated. Maybe because I knew, deep down, that once I saw what was inside, there would be no going back. The house creaked softly, as if waiting for me to make a choice. Outside, thunder rolled far away, a storm gathering somewhere I couldn't see. The envelope sat on the table for what felt like an eternity. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, each second stretching longer than the last. It was strange how something so small, a folded piece of paper sealed with silence, could hold so much weight. By the time I finally picked it up, the storm outside had found its way closer. The windows rattled as the wind whispered through the cracks, like voices trying to be heard. I took a deep breath and tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. Ethan, standing in front of a house I'd never seen before. His expression was distant, almost sorrowful. Behind him, a woman stood at the door. The same silver-haired woman from the bookstore. But this time, she wasn't a stranger in the frame. She was standing too close. Familiar. I turned the photo over. There was something written in neat, careful handwriting. You were never meant to find this. My heart sank. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. That maybe she was his relative, a friend, anyone but what my thoughts suggested. But then another piece of paper slipped from the envelope. It was a note folded twice. He's trying to protect you. But the truth is heavier than you imagine. Don't confront him yet. Wait, watch. You'll understand soon. The signature was only a single letter, A. That night, I couldn't bring myself to speak to Ethan. When he came home, I pretended to be asleep, breathing slow, steady. He stood by the door for a long time, long enough for me to feel his presence, the way his hesitation filled the room. Then I heard him whisper something, soft and broken. I wish you'd never followed me. The floor creaked as he turned away. The next morning, I decided to find that house. I retraced the background of the photo, the pattern of bricks, the vines crawling up the wall, small clues that led me to the outskirts of town. When I finally saw it, my breath caught. The house looked abandoned, windows dusted, the paint peeling, silence clinging to its corners. But there were footprints by the door, fresh ones. I pushed it open slowly. The air smelled like old rain and burnt wood. Inside, faint light filtered through cracked curtains, illuminating fragments of a life left behind. Books scattered, a broken mirror, a child's drawing pinned to the wall. The drawing made me pause. It was of 3 figures holding hands, a man, a woman, a small child between them, and below, written in shaky crayon, Mommy, Daddy, and me. My chest tightened. The handwriting. It was unmistakably Ethan's. The same careful slant he used when jotting notes for me on the fridge. But this wasn't drawn by him. Someone had taught a child to write his name. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked behind me. I turned, heart pounding. It was the silver-haired woman. She stood in the doorway, her gaze calm, yet filled with something like pity. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly. I couldn't find my voice. Who are you?" She stepped closer, eyes soft. "Someone who once believed in him, the way you do now." "What are you talking about?" She glanced toward the drawing on the wall. "That was my daughter's. She drew it before everything changed." I felt my stomach twist. "What happened to her?" The woman's eyes glistened, but her voice didn't shake. "She disappeared, and the only person who ever came back was him." The woman's words seemed to hang in the air, suspended between disbelief and dawning realization. She turned away from me, tracing her fingers over the dusty window frame. The glass reflected both our faces, 2 women bound by something neither of us had chosen. I wanted to speak, to deny what she implied, but my voice betrayed me. All I managed was a whisper. "What do you mean, he came back?" She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Sometimes," she said softly, "people disappear in more than one way. The body stays. The heart goes elsewhere." I took a step closer. "You think Ethan is the same person?" Her lips curved slightly, but it wasn't a smile. "Do you?" The question caught me off guard. For the first time, I wasn't sure. I thought of how distant he'd been lately. The way his eyes sometimes seemed to search for someone I couldn't see. How he'd whisper in his sleep, "I didn't mean to lose her." A gust of wind swept through the broken window, scattering dust into the pale light. The woman finally turned to face me fully. "There's something you need to see," she said. She led me down a narrow hallway, the wooden floor creaking under every step. Faded photographs lined the walls. Children, families, ordinary moments caught in time. But in the corner of one picture, half hidden behind another, I saw Ethan again, years younger, standing beside the same woman. My breath hitched, she noticed. "That was taken before the fire." "The fire?" I asked. She nodded, eyes distant. "It took everything. My daughter, my husband, the life I thought was mine." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "What does Ethan have to do with this?" She met my gaze. He wasn't supposed to survive, but he did. And when he woke up, he didn't remember who he was, or what he'd lost. All he remembered was her. Her voice trembled slightly on that last word. "Her," I echoed. The woman nodded. "You." I froze. "That can't be true," I whispered. "He's never even met you before. He's—" She shook her head gently. "You remind him of me. That's why he found you. That's why he married you. Sometimes the heart rebuilds what memory erases." Her words felt unreal, like a story whispered in a dream. Yet something about them slid into place, unsettlingly. The way Ethan flinched at certain songs, how he avoided talking about the past, his inexplicable fear of fire. I looked around the house again. Every object suddenly felt charged with meaning. The cracked teacup on the shelf, the photo of a girl with a bright red ribbon, even the smell of smoke that still lingered faintly in the air. The woman placed a folded letter in my hand. "He left this before he disappeared. I never had the courage to open it, but maybe it wasn't meant for me after all." Her fingers brushed mine, cold, trembling, human. I didn't ask how she knew me, or how she'd found me. Part of me was afraid to know. I left the house before the storm broke. The wind followed me down the empty street, carrying with it fragments of the woman's voice. Back home, the letter sat beside the photograph on my table. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not yet. Instead, I stared at the rain sliding down the glass, watching the reflections twist and blur. Ethan came home late. His clothes were damp, his eyes distant. When he saw the letter, he froze. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said, "Where did you find that?" "In the house," I said. "The one in the photograph." His face went pale. He sank into the chair, covering his face with his hands. "You weren't supposed to know. Not like this." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "Then tell me the truth, Ethan. Who are you really?" He lifted his head slowly. The look in his eyes wasn't anger or fear. It was grief. Deep, silent, unbearable grief. I don't know. He whispered, "I thought I did, until I saw you." The silence that followed his words was unbearable. It wasn't the kind of silence that begged to be filled. It was the kind that meant something, a silence born from years of hiding, from truths too fragile to speak aloud. I waited. Ethan didn't move, didn't look up. Outside, the rain had turned to a soft drizzle. The storm was over, but it had left the sky heavy, colorless, as if the world itself was holding its breath with us. Finally, he spoke. "I remember waking up in a hospital. They told me I was lucky, that I survived something most people wouldn't. But when they asked me my name, I couldn't answer." He paused, his voice low, distant. There were flashes, faces, laughter, a small house by the lake, and fire, always fire. I listened, trying to read his every word, every tremor in his tone. The doctors said my mind had built a wall. That trauma does that sometimes. Locks things away to protect you. I believed them. I tried to move on, but he looked up then, his eyes clouded with something between fear and recognition. "Then I saw you," my heart stuttered. "Me," he nodded slowly. "The first time we met, it was like I'd stepped into a memory I didn't know I had. You were wearing that blue scarf. Do you remember? The one that always smells like rain. I did. It had been an ordinary day. I'd dropped a book at the cafe, and he'd picked it up before I could. I remembered how he smiled. That gentle, half-lost smile that felt both familiar and foreign." Ethan continued. "That was the moment everything started to return. Not clearly, just fragments. The sound of a little girl's laughter, the smell of burning wood, a woman's voice calling my name." He trailed off, closing his eyes. I wanted to speak, but I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened with something that wasn't quite fear. It was sadness or maybe empathy, the kind that makes you realize the person sitting across from you is carrying a world you can't see. "What happened that night?" I finally asked. He didn't answer immediately. His fingers traced the edges of the letter, as though he could draw strength from its shape. "I went back to that house," he whispered. "Years ago, before I met you. I thought maybe it would help me remember. But when I got there, she was gone. Everything was gone. Only the drawing was left." "The drawing?" "The one on the wall," he said, his voice trembling. "The child. The red ribbon. It was our daughter's." The words struck like quiet thunder. I couldn't breathe. "Ethan, are you saying—" He shook his head quickly, eyes wet. "I don't know. I don't know if she's real or if my mind made her up. The woman, the one you met, she might be real. Or maybe she's a ghost of who I used to be. Every time I think I've found the truth, it slips away again." The rain began again, softer now, like the sky itself was listening. Ethan stood and walked to the window. Sometimes I wonder if the fire ever ended, or if I'm still inside it, just dreaming the rest. His reflection in the glass looked older, wearier. A man carrying the ashes of a life he couldn't touch anymore. I stood beside him. The room felt different now. Smaller, but more honest. "Maybe," I said quietly. "You survived for a reason. Maybe that reason was to find peace, not the past." He turned to me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he smiled. Not the polite smile I'd grown used to, but a broken, human one. "I don't deserve peace," he said softly. "Not after what I left behind." "You don't get to decide that," I replied. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. Maybe it brought you back here so you could finally forgive yourself." He looked down at the letter again, still unopened, and handed it to me. "Then you open it." "I can't." My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The paper was yellowed at the edges. The ink faded, but the words were still clear. "If you're reading this, it means you survived. You were always the one who found a way out. Don't come looking for us. We're not where you think we are. Let memory rest. Let love be what saves you, not what burns you." There was no signature, only a small handprint, a child's, pressed faintly in ash. The letter slipped from my hands. Ethan caught it before it hit the floor, his eyes wide, his voice a whisper. "She's still out there." The clock ticked once. The power flickered, and in that brief moment before the lights went out, I could have sworn I heard it too. A child's laughter, echoing faintly from somewhere beyond the rain. That night, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faint handprint again. The mark of a child who might never have existed, yet somehow lived inside every shadow of our lives. Ethan had fallen asleep on the couch, the letter still clutched in his hand. His breathing was uneven, restless, as though even in dreams, he couldn't escape the ghosts that followed him. I sat beside the window, watching the pale moonlight slip through the curtains. Outside, the world looked almost unreal. Quiet streets, wet rooftops, the faint hum of distant thunder. And somewhere out there, a truth waited to be found. I didn't know where to begin. The woman's words kept echoing in my mind. He wasn't supposed to survive. Who decided that? And if he wasn't meant to, what was he still carrying that fate itself couldn't burn away? By morning, I had made a decision. If the answers existed, they would be in that house, the one that started it all. When I arrived, the air was different. The wind had died down, replaced by a strange stillness, almost expectant. The door creaked open on its own, as if the house had been waiting for me. I stepped inside carefully. The light filtered weakly through broken blinds, catching the edges of forgotten things. A cracked teacup, a photograph, a child's toy lying half buried in dust. But something had changed. On the wall where the drawing once was, there was now something new. A message written in what looked like charcoal. "Memory is not lost. It's only rewritten." I froze. The handwriting was eerily similar to Ethan's. Before I could move, a soft noise came from upstairs, the creak of a floorboard, then another. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. No answer. I climbed the staircase slowly, each step groaning beneath me. The air grew colder, the light dimmer. At the top of the stairs was a door, half open, swaying gently with the wind that whispered through a cracked window. Inside, the room looked untouched by time. A small bed, a bookshelf filled with children's stories, and in the corner, a red ribbon tied neatly around a dusty teddy bear. My breath caught. It was the same ribbon from the drawing. I knelt down, brushing the dust from the bear's face. Something inside it rattled faintly. I turned it over. The back had been carefully stitched shut. With trembling fingers, I pulled the thread loose. Inside was a folded photograph. Ethan again, younger, smiling, holding a little girl in his arms. The woman stood beside him, radiant, alive. The girl wore the same red ribbon in her hair. On the back of the photo were the words, "For Daddy, so you don't forget me when the stars go out." Tears blurred my vision. My hands shook as I held the image closer, as though it could speak. Behind me, the floor creaked again. I turned quickly, but no one was there. Only the faint smell of smoke and the whisper of something soft, almost like laughter. When I returned home, Ethan was awake. He looked at me as though he already knew where I'd been. "You found it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Ethan, she was real. The woman. The child. They were your family." He closed his eyes, a single tear tracing down his cheek. "Then where are they now?" I wanted to answer, but before I could, I noticed something. A faint burn mark on his wrist, shaped like the edge of a child's hand. It hadn't been there before. He followed my gaze, then looked away. "I keep feeling her," he whispered. "Every time I close my eyes, like she's trying to tell me something I forgot." The clock ticked once, twice. The air in the room seemed to shift. Outside, the wind rose again, brushing against the windows like fingertips. And faintly through the sound of the storm came that same voice. The child's, soft and distant. "Daddy, come home." Ethan looked at me, eyes wide, as if he'd heard it too. "Claire," he said, his voice breaking. "She's not gone." And in that moment I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about memory or grief. It was something deeper, something that refused to stay buried. The air in the room felt heavier after that night. Every sound, the ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the soft rustle of curtains, carried an echo of something unseen. Ethan tried to act normal, but I could see the change. He was distracted, listening to things I couldn't hear, watching the corners of the room as though expecting something to move. One evening I found him in the garden, standing under the old oak tree, whispering to the darkness. "Who are you talking to?" I asked softly. He turned, startled. "No one," he said quickly, "just thinking." But I noticed the ground beneath his feet, small handprints in the damp soil, perfectly formed, too small to belong to either of us. That night I dreamed again. The little girl with the red ribbon stood in a field of ashes. Her face was turned away, her small fingers pointing toward a flickering light in the distance. When she spoke, her voice was clear, not haunting, not ghostly, just sad. He forgot me because he had to, but you can help him remember. I woke up in a cold sweat. The window was open, though I hadn't left it that way. On the sill rested a single red thread, fluttering in the breeze. I didn't tell Ethan. Not yet. Instead, I began searching. Hospital records, newspaper archives, anything that mentioned a house fire near the lake. And I found it. A short article buried in the local section from 15 years ago. Tragic fire claims 2 lives. Woman and child believed dead. Father in critical condition. The photo was grainy but unmistakable. The man in the picture was Ethan. I sat there for a long time staring at the words. My mind refused to accept them. If that was true, then who was the woman I met? How could she be alive? The next morning I showed Ethan the article. He stared at it, eyes wide, his hand trembling. "This can't be right," he whispered. "If I was in that fire, how did I survive?" He looked up at me, panic rising. "Claire, what if I didn't?" The words hit me like a cold wind. I wanted to dismiss them, to laugh, to tell him not to be absurd. But something deep inside me wouldn't let me. His reflection in the window seemed strange, slightly distorted, like the glass itself couldn't quite hold his shape. "Ethan," I said gently, "you're here. You're alive. I can touch you." He looked down at my hand on his. "Can you?" he whispered. I froze. His hand felt colder than before, almost unreal. He stood suddenly, walking toward the door. "I have to go back, to the lake. She's waiting for me." "Ethan, wait." But he was already gone. I followed him through the winding road that led to the edge of the lake. The fog hung low, the water perfectly still. The burned remains of the old house stood like a scar against the pale horizon. He was there, standing at the shoreline, staring into the water. "She called me," he said softly. "Every night. I thought it was memory, but it's her." The wind picked up. I could hear it too now. A faint melody, almost like a lullaby. Ethan stepped forward, into the shallow water. "Ethan!" I shouted, running toward him. He turned back, his eyes glistening with tears. And for the first time I saw peace in them. "She's not gone, Claire. None of them are. They just needed me to remember." The mist swallowed him before I could reach him. I fell to my knees at the water's edge, screaming his name. But the sound was lost in the wind. The surface rippled once, twice, then stilled. And then I saw it, floating on the water, just beyond my reach. A small red ribbon. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was warm. When I looked up, the fog had cleared. The house was gone. The shoreline looked untouched, as if the fire, and everything that followed, had never happened. Only the ribbon remained. I held it tightly and whispered, "Rest now, both of you." The wind brushed against my cheek, soft, almost like a child's hand, and somewhere faint but real came the sound of laughter. Under the dull orange glow of the streetlights, the rain began to fall again, thin, silvery threads weaving through the night air. Claire's footsteps echoed softly as she made her way down the narrow alley behind the old bookstore. She had been following the trail of strange coincidences all day. Faces she half recognized in crowds, whispers that vanished when she turned, a number that appeared again and again on receipts and messages. 0719. That number. It haunted her now. It wasn't just time. It was a pattern. Every major event in her life, every twist of fate, somehow pointed back to 719. Her phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. "You're close. But don't look back." Her breath hitched. She froze, every nerve alive with tension. She wanted to turn, but fear, that cold, ancient instinct, rooted her to the ground. She took a slow breath, forcing her heartbeat to steady. Then she walked forward again, toward the light spilling out from the back door of the bookstore. Inside it smelled of dust, ink, and old secrets. The shop was closed, but a single lamp glowed near the back, illuminating stacks of journals and faded photographs. A voice spoke from the shadows. "I knew you'd come, Claire." It was a woman, older, calm, her tone steady but with something heavy beneath it. Claire squinted, trying to see her face. "Who are you?" The woman stepped into the light. Her eyes were the same shade as Claire's, pale storm gray. "I'm the reason you keep finding that number." Claire felt her knees weaken. "What do you mean?" The woman smiled gently. "Because 0719 was the time you were born, and the moment everything changed." Silence swallowed the air between them. The rain beat against the glass like impatient fingers. "Someone's been watching you," the woman continued. "But not for the reasons you think. They're trying to protect what's hidden, something that started before you were even aware of it." Claire's throat tightened. "Who are they?" The woman's smile faded. "People who think they can rewrite the past." A thunderclap split the silence. The lights flickered. When Claire looked up, the woman was gone, as if she had dissolved into the air itself. In her place on the table was a worn journal with the initials E.M. Claire. Opened it with trembling hands. The first page read, "If you're reading this, it means the experiment has begun again." Her pulse surged. On the next page, a photograph, blurry, faded, but unmistakable. It was her, standing in that same bookstore, under that same light. Only, the photo was dated July 19th, 1984, long before she was even born. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed that she should run. Yet something deeper, something ancient, whispered for her to stay. Then came another sound, the creak of a floorboard behind her. She turned slowly, her reflection flickering in the glass door, and saw a shadow that didn't belong to her. "Would you like me to continue from here?" As the mystery deepens into a story about identity, memory, and a hidden experiment connected to her birth,